Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Ellis. I'm the publisher of Rural Lifestyle Dealer. Thanks for joining us for this morning's webinar with Sara Hey from Bob Clements International, and she's going to share how dealerships across the country are setting goals for stability, growth, and accountability for each department, and what you can do to make the next season your most profitable season yet. Now, before I turn everything over to Sara, there's just a few housekeeping items. On your screen, you'll see a control panel with a Q&A icon. And you can submit questions there anytime throughout the presentation. And time permitting, we're going to look to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can. If for any reason during the presentation your connection or if our connection seems to fail and it looks like the webinar has been interrupted, just go back to the email you received earlier telling you how to join the webinar, and you can re-enter that way. So with that, we'll be ready to go, and I will turn everything over to Sara.
All right, thanks, Michael. I am so excited to be here again today and you having me to join you as we're working through one of these topics that in my mind is so fundamentally important for dealerships all across the country. So thanks for having me. Thanks for our partnership and just being able to come alongside with you, dealers across the country, to help them be successful in what they're doing. And what you guys do is a really great thing. So like Michael said, my name is Sara Hey. I'm with Bob Clements International. I've been with BCI now for probably going on 8 years, which seems really crazy to me. As I've been with BCI, I was with BCI a long time before I actually came on full time because Bob is my dad. I always joke that I only claim him if he's behaving. Honestly, I don't know where in the world he is today, so I guess I'll claim him. But I was part of a family business, probably like many of you, family business. And so I worked when I was like 10 years old in the garage putting together VHS training tapes. And that's kind of how I got into the business. But about 8 years ago, my husband and I had twin girls, and I became very, very passionate about getting a paycheck. So I called my dad and said, hey, Dad, is there any way that I could work in the family business? But my mom and dad started Bob Clements International about 35 years ago now. And what they have done and what they have created to help dealers achieve success across the country and across the world has been a wonderful thing to get to see firsthand. And so if you're not familiar with Bob Clements International, what we do, we always like to say that we are the Gordon Ramsay of kitchen nightmares for dealerships across the country. We love parts and service, and we love to help dealerships who are struggling become profitable again. So we work with about 4,500 to 5,000 dealers in a number of different ways, through webinars, blogs, through our dealer success group, our dealer toolbox, dealer certification. I mean, everything that we do in our company revolves around dealers. And so what I wanted to do today, and as we've had the conversation with Michael and Lynn and the team over at Rural Lifestyle Dealer, is I said one thing I think that would be an incredible conversation that we need to have is around setting off-season goals for dealers. Because I think there's this amnesia that kind of happens over the slow season for dealers. You go through the chaos that was your busy season, and then all of a sudden you forget everything that happened and you go, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. I didn't lose that much money, right? All of these things that come up, it's like this amnesia that happens. And so we've got to refocus right now and make sure that we are setting the right goals for our dealerships by department as we have time right now in the slow season. So one thing that is interesting for us to keep in mind is that we, as we sit right now, only have about 60 days to prepare for our next busy season. Now, depending on where you are in the country, it may be a little bit less or a little bit more. If you're in an area with lots of snow, fingers crossed, hopefully there's lots of great business coming in right now. But the truth of the matter is, with Christmas and all of these other things that are coming up, we've only got about 60 days to make sure that this next season is not like the season that we had in the past. Now, I don't know what last season was like for you. But my guess is if you are like most of the dealers we work with and that we are working with to increase the stability, accountability, and growth in their dealership, there was some chaos. There was some crazy that happened. And you go, you know what? Whatever that pain point is, whatever that was so awful, I don't want to go back to that again. We've got 60 days, not only to get ourselves on board, but our people on board to change what this next season is going to look like. And the beautiful thing about this is the fact that you, as an owner or manager, are already taking that first step. You, as an owner or manager, are already moving to this place of saying, I don't know what it was last year, but I don't want that to happen again. Or I liked what was happening, but I just want to be a little bit better. That forward progress that you're already committing to sitting in this webinar and learning is an indication that it is going to be different. And that's what I want you to keep in mind. So here's my question. When you think back on last busy season, your last season where it was just insane for you, those 6 weeks that happened to feel like Christmas in the midst of a dealership, what comes to mind? For many dealers that we work with, the idea of being a firefighter is what comes to mind. Like, you go in the middle of season from one fire to the other, and you go, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm so done with this. This may be my last season because I don't want to be this crazy firefighter anymore. Here is what my hope is for you. My goal for you is to move from being the person who is the firefighter who's constantly fighting fires all day long in your dealership, specifically at season, to being the arsonist. I want you to start the fires. I want you to create the excitement, create the movement, create the change in your dealership. But if you're so busy fighting fires all the time, you're going to have to be the one who goes and deals with the chaos that you're creating. Your job as an owner or manager is to create excitement and change in your dealership. But if you are sitting here dealing with problem after problem, you can't create that movement and that momentum. You know, we had a boot camp, I guess, 2 years ago. We were up in Boston, and I was talking about moving from this mentality of being a firefighter to an arsonist. A dealer came up to me and he said, Sarah, you're right. I want to move to the place of being an arsonist, and I want to burn my shop down. No, my friends, that's not what I'm saying. I don't want you to burn your shop down. But what I want you to do is just change your mindset. And sometimes we have to identify what it was about last season, what it was about the last 2, 5, 7, 10, I don't know how many seasons that you don't want to happen again. Because when we can identify that, then we can say this is what we are going to change. So when we think about the dealership and how we set goals with our Dealers Success Group members, we realize that there are really 3 pieces of dealership goals. And so again, as you look at other people who don't understand the dealership world and aren't in it day in and day out, they may say, you know what? There's a whole bunch of different things, but here's what it comes down to inside of a dealership. We see them typically broken into 3 categories. The first category of goals is stability. Now, you know that stability is what you need to focus on in right now for this next season if you did not take regular paychecks this last year. If you as an owner did not take regular paychecks, the focus of your goals for 2020 has to be stability. If you are not being able to make a living off of your dealership and what you're doing, are you aware that you're eventually going to have to close the doors? And you closing the door is not going to do anything positive for your employees, your family, your community. You are an important service, and we've got to make sure that you have that stability. So if you are in the place where you did not take regular paychecks in that 2019 or before that, this is what our focus is. And I'm going to break stability down by department as we go forward. The next thing that you may say is, okay, Sarah, I was able to take regular paychecks, but what my focus is for 2020 is growth. I want to open another location, but before you do that, call us first. Don't open another location without calling us. I want to increase the work through my service department. I want to increase whole good sales. I, Sarah, have the capacity with the people that I have or the space that I have that I have room for growth. And so if growth is your focus and vision as we go into 2020, I need you to be all in and laser focused on growth. Now, the third category is accountability. If you are at a place where you have stability. You are regularly taking paychecks. You don't say, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to make payroll this month. I'm going to have to go into my credit line. That's a focus on stability. We don't want to go into our credit line at any point of the year. Maybe then you say, okay, but I also, Sarah, have the capacity and ability to bring more work in, to sell more equipment, to do whatever it is that I want to do in regards to growth. Then maybe our focus is accountability. Because the thing that we see with dealerships is that once the stability happens and the growth happens, the accountability portion, you get a little sloppy. Things get comfortable. You feel like you're going in the right direction, and you just get a little sloppy. If our focus in our dealership is accountability, the cool thing that happens is when we get to that place of accountability inside of our dealerships, the other two continue to move. But you cannot have growth without stability, and stability and accountability are going to be connected at the core of what they are. And so we are going to walk through each of these for each department. The other thing that we've got to talk about before we get into how this looks for each department is the most important piece of achieving any goal that you may have, whatever it is, whether you want to lose 50 pounds in 2020, or you want to run a marathon, or you would like to start reading more books, whatever it is, the most important part of setting any goal and actually achieving it is making that goal obnoxiously clear to everyone around you. Now, I mean, I'm sure you haven't met many people who run long distance races that don't talk about it consistently. You don't meet people who've lost 100 pounds that didn't have their focus there, and that was the focus of most of their conversations. Now, I have this little kid up on this screen because I think what I see is, as a mom, the people who are the most clear and obnoxious about their goals are children. I have 3 young girls. I have identical twins who are 7 and a 3-year-old who is my carbon copy. I always say with her, I'm not sure if she's either going to run a company or a gang in prison, but it's going to be one of the two. Yeah, most of the days we think it's a gang in prison. But with kids, what we see is that when they have a goal, whether it's a Christmas present they want or something that they're trying to achieve, what they do is they are so obnoxiously clear about it. It consumes their thoughts, their focus, and what they are trying to do. As an owner or a manager, if we want to move our dealership forward in that stability, accountability, or that growth, we have to be obnoxiously clear about it with our people. We've got to be obnoxiously clear about it with ourselves. You know, you never see somebody who's like, you know what, I've got this goal and I'm going to eat healthy and start running. Like, they don't just like automatically do that. They've got to think about it. They've got to process it. They've got to put a plan in place, and they've got to talk to other people to make it happen. People don't just default to eating kale chips and running marathons. No, people default to watching trashy television and eating potato chips on the couch. What is it that you are going to move forward to? And how, as an owner or a manager, are you going to make this obnoxiously clear? You can't say it one time and expect for it to happen. It has to be this constant conversation that continues over and over. So let's dive into the service department first. You know, this is what we always say is the backbone of the dealership. When this is out of place in your dealership, you start bleeding money. There's a pain to have to walk through and deal with. But if we can get the service department right, if we can get our service department set in a way that allows us to be profitable and efficient, other pieces of the dealership are going to start coming into play. It's one of our very favorite things to talk about. But if we're thinking about what does stability look like in our service department, the number one thing I would say that you have to do day in and day out in your service department is track time. Tracking time is the most important thing that you can be doing in your service department. Let's say that you have a technician, right? And one technician, we look at technicians, they can generate 50 weeks a year, 2,000 hours a week, or a year, 2,000 hours a week. That'd be a pretty incredible technician. No, but 2,000 hours a year if they were working 50 weeks a year. So let's say, for the sake of realistic expectations, that we can only keep our shop busy 10 months a year. So let's say that we've got 1,800 hours available for us to be billing out for our technicians. So if, let's say again, for easy math, that we have a posted labor rate of $100 an hour, are your technicians bringing in anywhere near the $180,000 mark for your dealership? If not, we've got to think through what's happening. And the number one thing that we see is that if you want that stability, that regular income, that actually ability to take a check as an owner, we've got to focus on time. Time is what we sell in our service department. So we measure every 6 minutes in a service department. Now, if you have business management software, your technician should be clocking in and clocking out of work orders every single time on the business management software. We have to. If you don't, I mean, you can have them just continually write down where their time is going, but we track every 6 minutes in your service department. We know if our labor rate is $100 an hour, 6 minutes would be a tenth of an hour. So that means that 6 minutes is worth $10. How many times in your dealership do your people lose 6 minutes here or there? Oh, they got to go look at the lot for the equipment that they can't find. Oh, you know, we've got to have a coffee break. We've got to have a coffee so we have the energy to move forward. No. Time is your inventory in your service department. If we are not tracking time regularly, consistently, and billing out that time, it'd be like us buying a 2-gallon jug of milk and only using half of it, so throwing it out at the end of the day and going to buy a new one the next day just doesn't make sense. So if we are having stability issues in our service department, the number one thing I would say that we need to focus on, the first thing before anything else you've got to focus on, is asking the question, are we actually tracking time? If we are not, that is going to create more stability for us than just about anything we could do. Now, when we look at the service department and we look at the growth aspect of service, you are in a place where you say, okay, Sarah, things are stable in our service department. You know, as an owner, every billable hour that's produced, I am taking 20% of the money that's coming out of the service department. Every single one. That's what we say. Every billable hour that's produced, you as an owner need to be taking 20% as net profit in your pocket at the end of the day. So if you are at that place, then you say, okay, how do I grow? But again, we've got to make sure the bases are covered before we come to this place of growth. Because if you were to grow your dealership and you did not have the base processes in place, what kind of customer experience would that be? You would put all of this time, energy, and money into growing your dealership, but your customers would have a terrible experience and it'd take you back to square one. So when we think about growth in our service department, I think there's two different things that this can mean. The first may be utilizing your people to their full potential. Are your people actually generating you the amount of money that they can be generating you? How many technicians do you have? Multiply your posted labor rate by 1,800 hours. Is your shop anywhere close? If it's not, we need to get that in place first. The second thing that I think that growth could mean for your dealership may be adding additional revenue through new services and people. All right, so our service department can become this ATM machine. When you get your processes in place, when you get the stability in place in your service department, adding another technician is just like adding another ATM machine that's just going to throw off $100 bills all day long. But it's not going to happen if you don't have the processes in place to begin with. And so if we say, okay, we're in this place of growth, we're ready to add more people, then we know that we have the ability to grow our service department. The other thing you may think about is other services that you can bring in. You know, as you look at your winter service special, how do you create that busyness in your shop during that slow season? You know, we've pretty much missed the window at this point for our winter service special. I think you could probably hit a early spring special if you wanted to, but we typically see dealerships with the best case scenario, the best results on their winter service special when they start promoting that late August, early September for most of the country, because at that point we can start moving the equipment into our dealership at the pace we want. people are excited to get in, but to start promoting right now would cause some chaos, in all honesty, and we don't necessarily want that. If you've got more questions about winter service specials and how we do them, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards. But here is what we know. If we want to create this growth in our service department, we have to say, number one, what do we have capacity-wise with our people? Can we grow our service department with the people we already have? And if we can, let's just add another person who can continue to generate us money. If the growth in our service department looks like additional revenue through new services or new people, that's a great piece too. You know, we see a lot of dealerships who've started to grow through rental, doing a lot of great rental, and that adds additional revenue to the service department as well. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we can look at growing our service department, but the question is, number one, do you have the capacity to actually grow right now? And if you do, how are we going to do it? Is it going to be through a preseason service special for our spring? Like, now is the time to do preseason for spring. Like, as we're thinking through this, we've got to say, how do we continue to grow what we have and what we have the capacity to handle? Now, when we think about accountability for the service department and what we're working with our dealer success group members on, you have to ask yourself, what do you actually require your service department to do for your business? As an owner or manager, what is it that you're requiring your service department to do day in and day out for your business? Are you actually requiring it to be that profit center that you need it to be? If not, that's the accountability piece. We've talked about that a lot already, with the time, with the processes, with our people. But I think the thing that we see in the service department specifically is, once you get your service department up and going, it's like a factory that continues to just turn out $100 bills over and over and over for you. And so it can be easy to get lazy in your service department. And when we have dealerships who call us that we've gone in and helped turn around their service departments, or they're part of our dealer success group, and we've got their service manager and their technicians on board through our weekly workshops with the processes, that typically the easiest thing that goes, the first process that slides in the service department, comes down to the triage process. Now, the triage process is a process that we utilize in our service department. It happens once a day during the slow time, twice a day during busy time, at 11 o'clock. So we do it an hour before lunch, or at 4 o'clock, so an hour before the end of the day. But our focus is getting all of the equipment and having a technician actually looking at it before the end of the day. So we want to be communicating back to our customers within 24 hours of when their equipment comes in the door with a high level, hey, we just looked at it, here's what we think it's going to cost, what we're going to need. And the other thing that the triage process does is it allows us to start communicating with the parts department well in advance of us actually needing the parts. Now, we always say, if you are a parts manager, what kind of stress would be reduced in your life if you had a 3-day notice on any part that the service department needed? 80% of the parts even that they needed. It would be an incredible stress reducer. But when we get into the midst of this good groove with this stability, we're making the money we need, the growth, things are continuing to grow. We are a process. We can just put another body in this process and it'll continue to generate us money. The accountability is that you have to ask yourself, what is going to be the biggest process that's going to slide most easily for you? And for most of our dealerships that we work with all across the country, the issue is letting the triage process slide. That is fundamental to making the rest of the processes that we utilize work. So ask yourself, are you having your technicians look at the equipment within 24 hours of it coming in the door? If not, we need to fix that so that the rest of our process can go effectively. Now, as we look at the parts department, we'll start at stability again. If you are in the parts department and you go, oh my gosh, I have all of these parts back here, but we are just not making the money we need to on the parts, stability is where we've got to focus our time and our energy. So maybe stability in your parts department looks like simply having your parts margins right before you go into next season. I hope that you're all aware that our parts should not be set at MSRP. That is the last thing that we want for our parts department. We need our parts margins where we can actually be making money. MSRP was set by retailers, manufacturers, and it's based on the fact that you have 4 turns on a part every single year. That's how MSRP is factored. So if you have a part that's sitting on your shelf 4 times a year, sure, be at MSRP. That's how you're factoring that. But if you have a part on your shelf that does not turn 4 times a year, then we've got to be looking at different pricing strategies. So what we see in dealerships across the country is that if you are an outdoor power equipment, I expect your margins to be between about 48 and 53%. That's what I expect the margins on your parts to be if you are an OPE, outdoor power equipment. If you're in that rural compact market, I expect probably 45 to 48% on your margins. That's where I need you to be. And then if you are in the big ag or the construction, we typically see about 38 to 42, 35 to 42, somewhere in there, depending on what your mix is. Now, the reason that we have different markups is because when you're an outdoor power equipment, it takes a lot more parts to go through your parts department for you to make the same amount of money that you would if you were in the bigger stuff. You have to touch a lot more things. You have to provide a lot more labor to sell the same amount of money that you would in either compact or big ag construction. So maybe for you, that's what it looks like. You say, what I'm focused on is stability in my parts department before we get to next season. I am going to make sure my pricing is right. Now, we talk a lot about velocity pricing and tiered pricing. That's how we price our parts in our parts department, because our goal in the parts department is we want people to walk out of the parts department and say, man, it seems like they have everything I need and they have great prices. And so we want to make sure the parts that they know the price of, the oil filters, the belts, the blades, the things like that, that people typically know the price of, are at MSRP or a little bit below. So we've got to mark up our prices with velocity pricing and tiered pricing to pick up that extra percentage in other ways. All right, so that's what we're thinking about with stability. If you say, Sarah, my parts pricing is where it needs to be, my margins are where they need to be, but I'm ready to grow my parts department for 2020, here's what I'm going to say. The first thing is that the easiest way for you to grow your parts department is by growing your service department. Most dealerships we're working with, for about every dollar they sell in the service department, they're selling about 50 cents worth of parts. So if you want to grow your service department, I would say the easiest way we're going to do that is through our parts department. Or if we want to grow our parts department, excuse me, the easiest way for us to do that is through our service department. The other thing that we've got to keep in mind is that we can also utilize upselling and cross-selling at the parts counter in order to grow our parts department. Now, here's what upselling and cross-selling is. Cross-selling is when you go to McDonald's and you say, I would like a cheeseburger, please. And they say, well, would you like to make that a meal? Right? So they say typically people who come into McDonald's want the quarter pounder with cheese plus a large fry and a Coke or whatever your soda of choice is. Okay, so they say you ordered a cheeseburger, a quarter pounder with cheese, but we know typically people who come in looking for this say, I also want X, Y, and Z. Now, in your dealership, I would like to call this the one-trip stop to the hardware store, where I don't know how many of you have ever gotten the privilege of doing some home improvement projects for your spouse. My husband, bless his heart, always gets to do lots of projects for me. And typically it happens over a weekend where he has to go back and forth to the hardware store 4 or 5 times. He's like, man, I wish somebody would have just told me that if I was buying X, I would also need Y. That's what cross-selling is. When somebody comes into your dealership with a belt with chunks out of it, you go, you know what? It's probably not just a new belt you need. There's probably other things that you need with it. Now, upselling, on the other hand, is saying, here is a small fry, and they say at McDonald's, they say, would you like to supersize that? That's what upselling is. So maybe it's a battery on the counter that a person comes in and says, hey, I want the cheapest battery that you have. And you go, okay, I can do that for you. But I want you to understand we also have this better battery, and here is why it's better. We see this a lot when people come into the dealership and ask for an aftermarket part, but what they really is the best value for their money is an OEM part. Because even if you look at air filters, you could open an air filter. I encourage you to do this. Cut open an air filter and look at the inside of it, aftermarket and an OEM. They are totally different products. So if you were to have somebody come and say, I want the cheapest air filter you got, you go, okay, I can do that. But I want to inform you about why we would maybe go with the OEM. You're going to get better quality. It's going to be better for your engine. These are the reasons why you've got to do this. And so upselling and cross-selling is simply an education process. But the part of this growth that we have to focus on is that we've got to train our people to be teachers at the parts counter. But now is the time. This is not a thing that you teach in the middle of busy season. Now is the time to start saying our focus for 2020, our 2020 season is that we want to see parts growth. And to do that, we're not only going to increase the revenue coming through our service department, but we are also going to focus on upselling and cross-selling in the parts counter. All right, so when you say, okay, Sarah, I've got the stability, I've got the growth, now I'm focused on the accountability, what does that look like? What does that accountability look like? The thing we've got to keep in mind is that what is in our parts department is just gold cash sitting there. You know, you get into this place, I think, you walk into the parts department and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many parts. There's no organization to it. But we've got to understand that our parts are cash sitting there. And so we've got to put a plan in place now to start burning down our parts inventory when we hit to July. Because I don't know what your financial situation is right now in your service department, your dealership as a whole. But if you are having to dip into your credit line right now to make payroll, to pay your lease, to do whatever it is, floor plan, whatever you're having to do right now, my guess is that we did not burn down enough parts inventory at the peak of season. Now, let's say that we have 4 of a product that we know that we can get within 24 hours in the middle of season. In July, we're going to start setting our mins and maxes to our burn down point, where we move them to, we have the minimum we need to do a repair on a job at the peak, in the slow season. That's what our focus is. You know, as we're working with this, with our dealer success group members, one of the things that we always see is July is the time we start burning down parts inventory. It's a lot harder to burn down parts inventory in August and September and hope to be at our mins and maxes at that point. But we've got to start focusing on burning down that parts inventory in July. And that's a lot of times where our parts managers need that accountability to say, okay, would you walk alongside me? Would you make sure that I'm doing this right and that we have the cash flow we need in December to pay payroll instead of parts sitting in the back of our parts department? Because my guess is that now many of your people will take parts in lieu of a paycheck. Maybe some of them, but probably not most of them. So we want to make sure that we have turned our parts into cash by the time we hit September, October, November, so that when we are at this point in the year, you are not going into your credit line. So let's talk about sales for just a minute. When we think about the sales department and the stability of a sales department, one of the things that we know is that what you can do to create that stability in your sales department is have activity requirements for your salespeople. You know, I was somewhere just recently, and a person said to me, they said, Sarah, my salespeople aren't going to tell me what they do all day long. They don't tell their wife where they are. They're not going to tell me what they're doing all day long. Okay, well, that's a whole different issue that we need to address and deal with. But what we do with the dealerships we're working with in the sales department is that we require every salesperson to have a minimum amount of touches every single day. Typically, the baseline is 20 touches with a customer over the course of the day. So that can be a phone call, an email, a text message, somebody walking into the dealership, them going out if they need to. If they're an outside salesperson, we typically have that at about 5 touches because it's a lot harder to be in front of people outside of the dealership. It just takes more time and energy than inside the dealership. But 20 is what we do as our minimum. We actually set compensation around the touches that happen in our sales department. So if you're a salesperson and you want a base of $400 a week, we typically say you have to do 20 touches every single day with a customer, 20 touches. If you want to make $500 a week, we expect 20 or 30. And then if you want to make $600 a week, we expect 40 touches every single day from that. And that's how they set what their base is. That's how we do it with the compensation programs that we work with. But the thing that we know is that if we can just simply have the consistency of touching the customer over and over, eventually those will turn into sales. You know, we have a dealership that we've worked with for years and years in Mississippi. And the owner had been the full-time salesperson and all of the sales, and he brought on a brand new salesperson. He reached out and he said, okay, what do we need to do to get him up and going so that he can start generating revenue for our business? And what Bob said is, I want you to go into your database and I want you to pull a list of anybody who's bought from you between the last 5 and 7 years. That's all I want you to do. Brand new salesperson, we said, go into your database, pull the list of people who bought from you within the last 5 to 7 years. The reason we focus on that 5 to 7 years is, number one, warranty's probably just about up on it. Number two, if they financed it, financing's probably paid off. And number three, they're just ready for something sexy, shiny, and new. They're excited about something new. And so we say, okay, go pull that list. Now this salesman, brand new salesperson, started just calling that list. We picked 400 of those people out. We said, we want you to just start touching them. He picked up the phone. He said, hi, my name is Paul. I'm new at XYZ dealership, and the owner asked me to give you a call. Is there anything I can help you with? He, over the first year, his first 12 months in that dealership, by calling no one else, reaching out to no one else, sold over $1 million worth of compact tractors. One salesperson, by reaching out to that list between that 5 years purchase and that 7. If you go, I need that stability, look at your database, pull the list, and have your salespeople start picking up the phone and saying, hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sarah, and I just wanted to see if there was anything we could do to help you. Some of them will say no, and that's okay, but then some of them will say, you know what, we were just talking about needing a new tractor. We were just talking about needing a new mower. So when we can do that, that will create stability for the sales. When we think about growth in the sales department, I think one of the things that we've got to keep in mind is that we've got to have a marketing plan that mimics the growth that we are hoping to see. So if you say, I'm going to increase my sales by 10% over the course of this next year, my question for you is your marketing plan correlated to that growth? In our dealer success group, we just went through setting projections for 2020 and what are, by month, by department, what we're expecting the businesses we work with to produce. The next conversation we are going to have in January is, let's tie our marketing into these projections, because if we want to see these projections happen, we have to have the correlation of marketing. So if we say in our sales department, in the month of May, we are going to have 20% of the sales for the whole entire year. That means May, 20% of our marketing budget has to be spent in May to help bring that to fruition. But the other thing that we've got to keep in mind as we're thinking about marketing specifically is that you have to spend your marketing money 6 weeks before you need to see the sales. So if we expect May to be our biggest month and we're going to have 20% of our sales happen in our whole goods in May, that means at the beginning of April, end of March, we've got to be spending 20% of our marketing budget, so we start priming the pump for that. If that is not the case, we are not going to be able to see this growth and increase in sales. So if your focus is growth in sales in your whole goods, how is your marketing budget correlated to your goals? If they are not correlated, it's going to be a lot harder to have that consistent growth than if you've got that correlated and that you're spending that money 6 weeks before you need to see the sales. When we think about accountability for the sales department, one of the things we've got to keep in mind is that transparency with your team is one of the keys to accountability and setting goals in whole goods. If you are keeping information from your team in the midst of the selling process, there is not going to be that growth that you need in your Sales department. One of the things that we see over and over again as the best way to create this accountability is to have weekly and monthly meetings with your team. And again, these are not like deep dive into all of the information for your dealership, but my goal in these meetings, these are about 15 minutes at max, and you bring everybody together and you say, hey, I just want to give you an update of where we really are. The dealerships that we see who are the most successful are the ones who share their information openly and honestly with their people. Because the thing is, you have hired good people. If you have people who have been with you for a while, there's a reason that you hired them in the first place. You would not hire a loser. Like, you wouldn't hire somebody who comes into your dealership and is unmotivated and hates being with you all the time. Like, no, that's not who you're going to hire. You hired good people. But as owners and managers, what we see is there's this need to be secret around the numbers and what our goals are and what we're trying to aim for. No. We need to empower our people with all of the information they need to do their job. And when you do that, there's this accountability aspect that comes not only to you, but for your people as well, because they know what numbers you're trying to aim for, what you're trying to shoot for. And if you miss that, if we don't have that conversation, then we are not going to be able to grow in the way that we need to, or the capacity that we actually have. So let's talk about management for just a minute. This is one of the things that I see over and over again is that owners and managers in dealerships, specifically the owners, don't love management. I think that's just like a statement. You don't love it because you didn't ever start your dealership with the desire to be an HR superstar. That's not why you started your dealership. You started your dealership because you liked the equipment. You started your dealership because you liked turning a wrench, or maybe you were at the parts counter and you really loved cars and you had the opportunity to buy into your dealership. So in your dealership, if you're like most of our dealers, the management of the dealership has gone to the wayside. And so maybe this is what your focus is as you walk into your 2020 season. Maybe you say, Sarah, what my dealership needs is just stability from me as the owner. And the easiest way for you to create stability for your dealership as an owner, two things. Number one, I want clear job descriptions for everyone in your dealership, including you. You need to have a clear job description for yourself, because what we know is that if we are able to be clear about what our role is and what we're willing to do, what we need to do, it allows everybody else to know what we expect of them. And when we are clear, we are being kind to our people. Now, I get it. You wear a lot of hats. You're the marketing person, the sales person, the GM, the accounts payable person. You're all of it. I get it. You go, how do I do that, sir? I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Here is what I want you to do. Number one, your job description as an owner needs to include three things. The first one is that you need to be responsible for the vision. Where are you going as a dealership? You then need to be focused on strategy. How am I going to get there? And the third thing as an owner that you have to have on your job description is developing the people to take you there. Your people need as clear job descriptions as you have, because the moment you create that clarity, you set them up for success. The other thing that you have to do if you want to create that stability in management is have regular employee reviews. Now, this is not something we just preach, but we practice it as well in our own company. Every year, twice a year, we sit down for employee reviews with all of our people. And we encourage our dealerships to work and do that as well. We typically like to see an employee review happen late January, early February. And then we like to see one happen right after season as well. When things have started to slow down, we can have the time and space to have the conversation. Now, we have more information on how to do employee reviews and what we do with the dealerships in our dealer toolbox on our website. But what we need to know is that if we want to create stability, our people want to know how they're doing. They want to know that you are leading them in a way. They want to know what is expected of them. And when you start putting these parameters in place of this is my expectation of you and this is how you're actually doing, your people will rise to the occasion. And yes, there will be a few that don't, but they don't belong on your team. So as a manager, do you have stability? Are people clear on what you expect from them and know what you think about how they are doing? Maybe you say, okay, Sarah, we've got stability. We've got that check. I've got a job description and we do employee reviews. Maybe you say, okay, I'm ready to grow this dealership. I'm ready to focus on that forward movement. The question I want you to ask yourself is this: who are you going to need in your business as you grow? We have to come up with a plan to grow that person now. Maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to open my third and fourth location in the next 5 years. I don't know what it is, what you want to do for growth. So what are you doing to start growing your next general managers? Maybe you say, okay, Sarah, in the next 12 months, I'm going to want to bring on a new technician. We're going to get our processes right. We're going to get the stability part. We're going to grow, and I'm going to need a new technician in the next 12 months. Well, what are you doing to bring in a service coordinator, someone who comes in and sweeps the floors, helps with the oil, stages equipment? Are you bringing somebody in? Because when we do that, we are literally growing our next technician, our next B-level technician. In your parts department, do you have a parts support specialist, somebody who just deals with that god-awful stocking parts order that's sitting on your floor right now, and technicians are coming and taking parts, not because they're trying to steal from you, but they are coming because they need to work on their jobs that they have sitting in this shop? Do you have somebody who comes in as an entry-level person to just put away your parts for you? That is your next parts person in training. We always say our focus is hiring low and then growing the people into who we need them to be in the future. We cannot just assume that these people are going to magically appear like a unicorn that we so desperately hope and need. No, we've got to have a strategy in place to grow these people into who we are going to need in the future. Now, accountability. What does accountability look like for management? The question I would ask you is, how are your finances? How is the cash flow situation going in your dealership? You know, we've started working with our Dealer Success Group members on taking this profit first mentality with our finances. We don't wait until the end of the year and see how much money is left at the end of the day. No, that's insanity. What I need you to do in the accountability level that so many of our dealerships are needing is I need you to take your profit first. Take what you expect as your profit first and then work off what's left. You know, it's no different than a tube of toothpaste. I don't know how many of you spend much time traveling or on the road. Maybe you're on vacation, but you get one of these like little tubes of travel-sized toothpaste. And you get there, you've got a week on vacation, you put your toothpaste on your brush and you go, oh my gosh, I'm almost out of toothpaste. How long can you make that toothpaste last? My guess is probably all vacation, because when you don't have it, you don't use it. That's how it works. So let's say, we'll throw out a crazy number. Let's say that you want your business to generate you a 10% profit. That's a lot. We're focusing on 1% and 2% right now. 10%, that's insane. No, but let's say we want to see a 10% profit from our business. What is stopping you from taking that 10% off the top and then working with the rest 90% to actually fund your business? That's what we're working on. That's what the accountability is when we're talking about management. You put so much into these businesses. You work harder than any employee that's actually on your team. You are running on fumes, but you make less money than anyone else in your dealership. That is insanity. We've got to say, what do we do to take the profit first and then work on what we have left? The other question I would say in regards to accountability is, what would your life in your business look like if your business was completely debt-free? Now, I would say this is one of the conversations that we are having with dealers who are past the stability, they're past the growth, and they say, okay, we are going to run a completely debt-free business. If you did not have to put a floor plan, if you did not have to pay interest on your equipment, what would that do for your life? We have one dealership who's really taken this and run with it. He and and his wife said, in the next 5 years, we are going to be a completely debt-free business. We are going to buy all of our inventory with cash. We're going to have our building paid off, and we are going to, that's our focus. And as we've worked through the numbers with them, we realized that the minimum that they are gaining by being debt-free is 5% at the bottom line, because they don't have all of this interest that they have to pay. What would happen in your business if you were completely debt-free? What would happen in your life if that's the kind of accountability you would need? Now, again, this is not something you snap your fingers and it's done. This is long-term vision and goals. But I want you to say, as we look at this last season, what is it, as you look at 2019, what is it that drove you to your point where you said, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I don't want to do this anymore? What department? And now if we can hone in on the department and say our focus in this department is just getting it stable. That's all I want, is for my service department to be stable and for us to just break even. Oh God, I hope it break more than just breaking even. But maybe that's what you say. Maybe you say in parts, I know we have capacity for growth. And for sales, I need that accountability with my people. I need to share the numbers, share the things that are happening. Or maybe in management, you say, Sarah, I don't even know what my job description is. I just want to keep in mind that you can't do it all. While all of these things are great things that you should be striving towards at some point, you are not going to do it all before the end of season. But what you are able to do is pick one thing. All I want you to do is pick parts, service, sales, or management, one of them, pick one department, and then decide, are you going to focus in that department on stability, growth, or accountability? And we're going to just start working through our departments in that way. But what department and what piece of that department, if you fix that before we went into this next season, would eliminate the most chaos from your dealership? That is where we're going to start. And I feel like if we can start now and focus solely on this over the next 60 days, our 2020 season will be better than our 2019. And then as we go after our 2020 season and we start working on the next one, we're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to develop, and we're going to be able to take our dealerships to a place where they are generating you obscene amounts of money and throwing cash off, where you are able to have a good life because of the business you created. All right, Michael. I know there was a few questions that popped through as we were walking through that.
Yeah, we did have a couple things pop up, and I liked the end there. The eliminating the chaos is certainly something we should all be working for.
Yeah.
Circling back to earlier on, you were talking about the upselling and the cross-selling. The question is, if that's not part of the current culture there, what would you say the first steps are towards instilling that culture into the culture?
Yeah, I would say having the conversation of, how many times have you ever walked into a store, you left, maybe it's the grocery store, wherever it is, and you left and you had to go back another time. How excited were you to go back into that store? Normally not excited, right? You get there, you're frustrated that you didn't have everything you needed. What we're trying to do is create a better customer experience for our customers, number one, because they are able to walk in and out in one trip with everything they need. But then the second part of it is we are here to educate our customers. We are parts professionals. And if we are professionals, that means we have this education knowledge as well, where we say, you know what? I know that you came in asking for the cheapest oil filter, but what you really need to take the best care of your equipment is X, Y, or Z. The customer can decide that they don't want that anymore. Like they can say, oh, I don't want the OEM filter, but we've given them the option. Michael, one of the statistics that always blows my mind with cross-selling is that Amazon, the little tiny company Amazon, who's just had obscene Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals, they have this bar at the end when you get ready to check out that says customers like you also purchase, and there's 3 or 4 items. What we've seen is that 30% of all Amazon revenue comes from that bar. 30% of this multi-billion-dollar company happens at that bar that says customers like you also bought this. And that's all we're trying to do with cross-selling, is that customers who are like you also bought this. So I think it's a conversation of saying, number one, we're trying to create an incredible customer experience. Number two, this is why it matters. Have you ever been frustrated when you walked into the home improvement store and you had to go back 3 times? And number four, what we're trying to do is grow our business. Again, we need to have that accountability, that transparency with our people and say, if we can grow this business, again, we have our bonuses for our parts people tied in to upselling and cross-selling with our compensation plans. We don't have time to go into that today, but it ends up being a financial win for everyone.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And then I actually just wanted to get your thoughts on something. You were talking a little bit near the end about annual reviews and performance evaluations. I read something recently that there's a movement underfoot with organizations to eliminate those, and they're just giving blanket percentage raises to people across the year under the philosophy that they should be communicating all year long to everybody, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but it seems to me that eliminating that annual review is kind of a dangerous precedent to set. And if you're just giving everybody the same raise, you're removing incentive for higher performers and giving incentive to lower performers. And I was just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea. We joke in our company when we talk about the salaries of people, their hourly rates, we don't give door prizes. Just because you walked in the door another day does not mean that your hourly rate, your salary is going to go up. If you want to increase your base, you have to continue to develop your skills and make yourself more valuable to the organization. That's how the dealerships we work with raise hourly rates for their people. On the other side, yes, we need to be communicating all the time with our people. We need to have that back and forth. But I think to have this space, that's uninterrupted space of 30 minutes even, where you sit down face to face with your employees and say, here is what my expectations are of you, and here is how it's going. What do you think? When we do employee reviews, Michael, for our dealerships that we work with and inside our organization, the person who is being reviewed has the same sheet that the person who is doing the reviewing has, and they both fill it out separately. So if we're doing the review, somebody fills that out, whoever the person who's doing the review fills it out, and then they look at it and say, okay, it looks like there's a discrepancy. I think I'm doing awesome, and you think I'm sucking at this. So where is this miscommunication happening? And so I think the value of being able to sit down face to face, we do it twice a year, and it's never correlated to a pay increase. We have a lot of dealers who say, I want to do employee reviews, but I just can't afford to give people bonuses. So pay increases, raises, bonuses never happen during employee reviews. They're two very separate things. This is just our twice-a-year check-in to say, here's what my expectations are. Here's how I think you're doing. Here's how you think you're doing. Where is the communication messed up? So again, yes, we need to be communicating all the time, but we don't give door prizes for people walking in the door another year.
Yeah, understood. And I totally agree. We got time for one more question here. How do you track and audit salespeople's customer touches? You talked about accountability.
Yeah. We make them write them down. So if you have a CRM, they have to track it in the CRM. Every single touch they have has to be tracked in the CRM. If you don't have a robust CRM that does that, literally print out a piece of paper that says with 20 slots for them, and where they write the customer's name down and what they talk to them about and how they talk to them. I mean, it doesn't have to be complex. And we require them to hand them in once a week to their sales manager, whoever's overseeing the sales. I mean, again, we're from Missouri, Michael, so we have to keep things really simple. But that's how we do it. We say, what is it? Just take a piece of paper, have them write down the touches that they're having, who they talked to, what they talked about, and they've got to do 20 a day. And that will create such stability within the sales department.
That's perfect. Well, that's all the time we've got for this morning. Today's presentation, both the video and the audio, are going to be made available on rurallifestyledealer.com. and you'll receive a link to go back and review it at your leisure, or if you want to share it with anybody, please feel free to do that. On behalf of Sarah and everyone at Bob Clements International, as well as everybody here at Rural Lifestyle Dealer, thanks for joining us. When you leave, you're going to be directed to a short survey. Please feel free to reach out to let us know what you thought of today's event, and if there are any topics you'd like to see us cover, absolutely let us know. Thanks again, everybody, and thanks, Sarah, for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.